Did you know that Africa is home to more pyramids than Egypt? That's right, Sudan boasts a greater number of these ancient structures. But that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the rich and often overlooked history of the African continent. Prepare to have your understanding of the past challenged as we delve into a world of forgotten empires, groundbreaking innovations, and remarkable figures. Let's explore some surprising facts that might just change the way you see history. Let's go all the way back to the very beginning, human origins. Where did humankind first emerge? The answer, unequivocally, is Africa. The oldest widely accepted fossils of Homo sapiens, our species, were discovered at Jebel el-Houd in Morocco, dating back approximately 315,000 years. But the story doesn't end there. Major fossil and archaeological evidence also comes from sites like Omo Kaibish and Hato in Ethiopia, as well as East Africa's Rift Valley. These locations provide crucial insights into the evolution of our ancestors, solidifying Africa's status as the cradle of humanity. But what about ancient civilizations? Of course, most people think of ancient Egypt. The civilization developed along the Nile River from around 3100 BC onward, following the unification traditionally attributed to Nama, also known as Menes. But, did you know there was another powerful civilization right next door? The kingdom of Kush rose in Nubia, centered at Kama, and later at Nopeta and Meroe. In fact, the 25th dynasty of Egypt, often referred to as the Kushite dynasty, ruled Egypt from roughly 747 to 656 BC. And here's that fact from the beginning: the Kushite civilization built more pyramids than Egypt, with Sudan having approximately 200 to 255 known pyramids, concentrated at Meroe, Nuri, and El Kuru. Let's move west. What do you know about the great West African empires? The Ghana Empire flourished from roughly 300 to 1200 CE, situated in the Sahel region between present-day Mauritania, Mali, and Senegal. Then, the Mali Empire rose to prominence in the 13th century, particularly under the leadership of Sundiata Keita after 1235. Perhaps the most famous ruler of Mali was Mansour Musa, who reigned from approximately 1312 to 1337. His pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324 to 1325 is legendary, showcasing the empire's wealth and influence. Following Mali, the Songhai Empire peaked in the 15th and 16th centuries under rulers such as Sunni Ali, who reigned from 1464 to 1492, and Askia Muhammad I, who reigned from 1493 to 1528. However, the Songhai Empire eventually collapsed after the Battle of Tondeba in 1591, when Moroccan forces defeated Songhai troops. Now, let's go east again. How about a country that was never truly colonized? Ethiopia stands as one of the world's oldest continuously existing states. It was never formally colonized in the same manner as most African countries. A defining moment in Ethiopian history was its victory over Italy at the Battle of Odwa on March 1, 1896, under the leadership of Emperor Menelik II and Empress Tetubato. Although Italy occupied Ethiopia from 1936 to 1941, this was a wartime occupation rather than a long-term colonial takeover. Speaking of long-term connections, did you know about the vast trade networks? Trans-Saharan trade connected West Africa to North Africa and the Mediterranean for centuries, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and culture. As a result, Timbuktu became a major scholarly center in the 14th to 16th centuries. The Sanko Madrasa and its associated manuscript tradition preserved thousands of texts on law, astronomy, mathematics, theology, and medicine, demonstrating the intellectual richness of the region. But the Sahara wasn't the only trade route. The Swahili city-states flourished from about the 10th century onward along the East African coast, including cities like Kilwa, Mombasa, Malindi, and Zanzibar. These cities were deeply connected to trade with Arabia, Persia, India, and later Europe, fostering a vibrant multicultural environment. Kilwa Kisewani became especially powerful in the 13th to 15th centuries, showcasing the economic and political strength of the Swahili coast. Let's go south now. What do you know about the massive stone structure in modern-day Zimbabwe? Great Zimbabwe flourished roughly from 1100 to 1450 CE in present-day Zimbabwe. It was built by ancestors of today's Shona-speaking peoples and served as a major political and commercial center, demonstrating advanced architectural and organizational skills. Now, let's discuss a dark chapter in history, but one that is crucial to understanding global power dynamics. The transatlantic slave trade lasted from the 16th to the 19th century, resulting in the forced transportation of millions of Africans across the Atlantic. Historians estimate that 12.5 million Africans were forcibly transported, with roughly 10.7 million surviving the Middle Passage and arriving in the Americas. Major embarkation regions included West Central Africa, the Bight of Benin, the Bight of Biafra, the Gold Coast, and Senegambia. This horrific trade had a profound and lasting impact on both Africa and the Americas. Following the slave trade came a new form of exploitation. The Berlin Conference took place from 1884 to 1885, during which European powers formalized rules for the partition of Africa. The scramble for Africa accelerated between roughly 1880 and 1914. By 1914, Europeans controlled approximately 90% of Africa. Only Liberia and Ethiopia remained formally independent at that point, though even their sovereignty was complex. Despite the odds, Africans fought for their freedom. African decolonization accelerated after World War II. Ghana became the first sub-Saharan African colony to gain independence on March 6, 1957, under the leadership of Kwame Nkrumah. 1960 is often called the Year of Africa, because 17 African countries gained independence that year, marking a significant turning point in the continent's history. Now, for some lesser-known details, let's zoom in on technology. Did you know about the early technological advancements in Africa? At Blombos Cave in South Africa, engraved ochre and shell beads dating back tens of thousands of years demonstrate symbolic behavior very early in human history. The Ishango bone, found near the Congo-Uganda region, dates to roughly 20,000 years ago and is often discussed in relation to early mathematical thinking. And at Ngwenya in Eswatini, one of the world's oldest known mines was active around 43,000 to 43,200 years ago. What about metalworking? In parts of sub-Saharan Africa, ironworking emerged early and, in some regions, independently. The Nok culture of present-day Nigeria is known for sophisticated terracotta art and early ironworking, dating roughly from 1000 BCE to 300 CE. The question of whether ironworking was independently invented in multiple African regions is still debated, but Africa was certainly not a passive recipient of technology. Now, let's talk about strong female rulers who shaped their societies. African women held sovereign and spiritual power in several societies. Queen Zinga of Nongo and Matamba, who lived from 1583 to 1663, resisted Portuguese expansion in present-day Angola. Amina of Zozo likely ruled in the 16th century in present-day Nigeria. Ya Asantewa led the War of the Golden Stool in 1900 against the British in the Ashanti region. Empress Tetubatu played a major political and military role in Ethiopia. And in ancient Nubia, women rulers known as Kandaks sometimes held significant power. Beyond its borders, Africa played a central role in the wider world economy. The Kingdom of Aksum in present-day Ethiopia and Eritrea was a major trading power from the 1st to 7th century CE. Aksum minted its own coins, used Guizi writing, and controlled Red Sea trade routes linking Africa, Arabia, and the Roman world. And contrary to popular belief, African history includes major urbanism. Large urban centers existed well before colonialism. Genjino in Mali was occupied from around 250 BC onward. Great Zimbabwe. Timbuktu, Kano, Ife, Benin City, and Kilwa were all thriving urban centers. Benin City was described by Portuguese observers in the late 15th century as highly organized and massive in scale. Benin also was home to incredible artistic achievement. The Kingdom of Benin created the famous Benin bronzes, mostly from the 13th century onward. In 1897, British forces carried out the Benin expedition, looting thousands of artworks and burning much of the city. So, as we wrap up this journey through African history, let's reflect on its historical significance and impact. Because modern humans evolved in Africa, African prehistory is not a regional topic but the starting point of the human story. Ancient Egypt, Kush, Aksum, Great Zimbabwe, Mali, Songhai, Benin, and the Swahili city-states all demonstrate that Africa developed states, architecture, trade networks, literacy, mathematics, diplomacy, and military systems. These were not isolated anomalies, but rather part of long, sophisticated African historical processes. Africa has always been a bridge, linking the Mediterranean, the Indian Ocean, the Middle East, Europe, and the Americas. African merchants, scholars, rulers, and port cities were active participants in global trade long before modern globalization. Enslavement and colonization transformed the modern world. The transatlantic slave trade helped build plantation economies in the Americas and generated immense wealth in Europe. Colonial extraction reshaped African borders, economies, and societies with lasting consequences. Africa's story is a testament to the resilience, innovation, and cultural richness of its people. It's a story that deserves to be told, studied, and celebrated. So, what did you think was the most surprising fact from this video?